Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. Some politicians and coal operators call themselves friends of coal, but one journalist says they don't seem to be friends of coal miners.
If you cared about your miners and your employees, you would be fixing these issues and not racking up more and more fines.
What not to do if you get poison ivy.
I would not personally put bleach on my skin. Not only would it burn, it's very caustic and it would cause more damage. It's generally not a good idea to put bleach on your skin anyway.
And pepperoni rolls were a staple in the coal mines. But public schools might be why they caught on.
On pepperoni roll days, the teachers would let you out 5 or 10 minutes early so that you could get to the cafeteria because there was always such a long line.
You'll hear these stories and more this week inside Appalachia. Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. Since taking office, President Donald Trump has slashed thousands of federal jobs and used executive orders to shake up regulation of energy production, including coal. Leanne Ray is editor-in-chief of the nonprofit news outlet West Virginia Watch. She recently published an op-ed that addresses several of these federal actions regarding coal. Your op-ed piece in West Virginia Watch is headlined, "It's time for West Virginia leaders to be friends of coal miners, not coal." That headline's a play on Friends of Coal, a 501c6 nonprofit trade group for the coal industry. And of course, a lot of people know it more from its stickers than its work behind the scene. You make the case that elected officials go out of their way to be, quote, friends of coal. What do you mean by that?
Well, to be honest with you, you were talking about the bumper stickers. That's all I knew from Friends of Coal, seeing that sticker growing up. And I actually didn't know what it meant. I had to look it up when I was writing this commentary to find out that it was actually a nonprofit group. But yeah, West Virginia's elected officials, they always talk about how they want to help coal. They turn their noses at renewable energy like solar and wind power. They see no problem with loosening environmental regulations, even though those regulations are there to protect West Virginians' health in order to allow more coal to be mined. Right now, in the West Virginia State Legislature, they're talking about a bill to create microgrids to power data centers. In the initial version of the bill requested by Governor Morrisey, there are provisions meant to support the state's coal industry. I believe it said it would have required electric utilities with coal-fired plants to operate at a 69% capacity and hold a 45-day supply of coal on hand at all times. It turns out most coal-fired plants in the state operate on an average of 40% capacity and stockpile a 30-day supply of coal. The power companies have said in response to that it'd be difficult to meet those standards, and doing so would have raised rates for existing electric customers in the state. West Virginians are already struggling with utility rates. We hear about Appalachian Power wanting to raise their rates all the time, and honestly, West Virginians, they can't afford another rate hike, especially one just to help the coal industry.
Partway through your op-ed, you flip this idea of politicians being friends of coal. I'm going to read a quote here. They say they want to stand up for coal. In reality, they're only standing up for coal mine owners to have less regulation so they can make more money. And let's be honest, coal mine owners in West Virginia show all the time they don't care about coal miners. Can you elaborate more on that?
Sure. The two biggest examples of this are Don Blankenship and Jim Justice. Blankenship was the CEO of Massey Energy at the time of the Upper Big Branch mine disaster, where 29 miners died. After that accident, MSHA issued Massey 369 citations and orders, including an unprecedented 21 flagrant violations, which carry the most serious civil penalties under the law. When Blankenship appeared on HG Media's Outside the Echo Chamber a couple years ago in a now-deleted episode, the host asked him, if you had done anything differently that day, what would you have done? He said he would have quit before the disaster, not that he would have fixed any of the safety issues or done anything to prevent the accident. He would have only saved himself, not those 29 men. That, to me, is someone who obviously does not care about his coal miners. He cares about the money and himself. And then our Senator Jim Justice, he has a long history of not paying mine safety fines. His family owns nearly 24 coal companies, and they owe more than $400,000 in delinquent mine safety fines that they racked up between 2014 and 2019. And last year, his family agreed to pay those fines. And this year they said, no, for real this time, we're going to pay those. And they've agreed to pay it by May 1st, I think. To rack up that much money when they originally owed over $5 million debt in a delinquent mine safety fines, that's a lot of safety violations. If you cared about your miners and your employees, you would be fixing these issues and not racking up more and more fines.
So since President Trump took office, his administration has announced it's closing 33 mine safety and health administration offices. It's fired hundreds of workers at the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, which conducts black lung research and screening, and just this week announced it was going to delay the implementation of a rule intended to crack down on silica dust, which is a contributing factor to black lung. At the same time, Trump also has signed 4 executive orders intended to prop up coal-fired power plants and coal production. So what does this all mean for the coal industry in West Virginia and for its miners?
Well, it might lead to more coal production, but it's going to leave miners much more vulnerable. NIOSH out of Morgantown did free mobile black lung testing across Appalachia, and talking to the union representative there, it sounds like everyone at NIOSH is going to be done by June, so that mobile testing unit is gone. The union official also told West Virginia Watch that there's no one else in government who does occupational safety and health, and they do the research to make everyone's job safer, so it's just going to leave coal miners in just a much more vulnerable position. Capito, Justice, and Miller, they all put out press releases saying they supported Trump's executive orders that are meant to revive the coal production. One of those orders removed Biden's administration's environmental regulations because Trump said it slows the approval of new mining projects. Well, yeah, that's for health and safety of everyone. It should slow it down. You should be looking at, if you mine in this area, how is it going to affect the neighborhoods nearby? How is it going to affect the water? You want to slow that down. You don't want to just open up mine production somewhere where it can hurt the environment and people. And then another one of his executive orders directed the U.S. Justice Department to block states from enforcing their own regulations on coal. This administration, they already show they don't really seem to care about the environment or people's health, so it could lead to many more mine disasters like Upper Big Branch, obviously more cases of black lung. With the silica dust rule being delayed, that was something that was really going to help take down the number of black lung cases. And we don't have that free mobile unit anymore. People aren't going to know. I don't know other than the mobile unit if they're going out on their own. I know personally for me, if I think something's wrong with my health, I might put it off. I might not want to go. And I could see people like that being like, oh, I don't want to know. I'm fine. And when they had that free mobile unit coming, that was something where they could go and get tested. And now that's something that's just not going to exist anymore.
So when you say leaders should be friends of coal miners, not coal, what do you envision for that? What does that mean for elected officials in Congress and beyond?
People seem to think that they can only do one thing. They can only support the production of coal. But they can do that at the same time of supporting coal miners. I honestly think that all of our delegation, they need to kind of grow a backbone and say, we need to take care of our coal miners. These brave people are going in these mines, risking their lives every day. We need to do everything we can to make sure there are regulations to keep them safe, that there's research that can help them with things with black lung, that they're being tested. Actually, Senator Capito, she did speak out about the cuts at NIOSH, and she was the only one. I didn't hear anything from Miller or Moore or Justice. I understand our lawmakers think coal's the past and the present and the future of West Virginia, but it's a fossil fuel. It's non-renewable. Once it's gone, it's gone. They can promote the production of coal and at the same time fight for the safety of our miners. There's no reason that they can't do both. I can't see Justice doing that as a coal mine owner, but honestly, he should be the one saying, we got to take care of our coal miners. We got to make sure that there are safety regulations out there for them. They're in there mining this coal that's helping with our industry. They always say coal keeps the lights on. They're getting this coal to keep our lights on. We need to be making sure we're doing everything for them to make sure that they're safe and that they're healthy.
Leanne Ray, thank you for coming on to speak with us.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Leanne Ray is editor-in-chief of West Virginia Watch. For a transcript of our conversation, visit our website, wvpublic.org. In 2024, work safety advocates hailed a federal rule that aimed to target the rise of black lung by better regulating silica dust in mines. The Trump administration recently announced it would push back the deadline to implement the new rule. Radio IQ's Roxy Todd reports coal mines were supposed to be in compliance by April 14th. Now that's been delayed until August.
A week before this announcement, the Mine Safety and Health Administration, or MSHA, held trainings across the country to explain how the new silica rule would work. Coal operators and miner advocates attended. At one meeting in Wise, Virginia, John Robinson carried oxygen and held a handmade wooden cane. After working 28 years in the mines, he learned he had black lung disease.
I just want men took care of. I don't want them to be like me.
Robinson and his wife were at the meeting to see if the federal government is prepared to enforce a new silica dust limit. A week later, on April 8th, MSHA announced it's temporarily pausing the rule until August. This comes after many employees who work on mine safety received layoff notices from the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, or NIOSH, according to a union that represents government employees. A spokesperson with the Department of Health and Human Services says NIOSH programs will be moved into a new agency called the Administration for a Healthy America, but the agency has not explained how this restructuring will work or who will do the research. In Appalachia, 1 in 5 miners get black lung, the highest level ever recorded, according to a NIOSH study published in 2018. This deadly disease is caused by exposure to silica dust. In Wise, Virginia, I'm Roxy Todd.
April 5th marked the 15th anniversary of the Upper Big Branch mine disaster in West Virginia. 29 coal miners died in an underground explosion. It was one of the worst mining accidents in recent memory. Justin Hicks and Curtis Tate from the Appalachia Mid-South newsroom sat down to talk about how it's remembered, especially by victims' families.
Hey, Curtis.
Hey, Justin.
So just about everyone in the coal mining community knows about the Upper Big Branch mine disaster. But for those that maybe don't know, can you tell us what happened?
Sure. The mine exploded in remote southern West Virginia on April 5th, 2010. 29 workers were killed and 2 were injured. We're talking about really small communities there that were reeling because everybody knows somebody. And the cause was determined to be a combination of coal dust and methane. The dust is really flammable and it's supposed to be controlled with vents and water sprays. But investigations later found that Massey Energy skirted safety standards for years. And the CEO of that company was tried and convicted of a misdemeanor. He served a year in prison.
Wow, yeah. And that explosion was 15 years ago, of course. But every year they hold this memorial in Beckley, West Virginia. It's the biggest town near Upper Big Branch mine portal. And I understand you attended this year, right? What was that like?
There were about a dozen people there, and they stood in silence as the names of all 29 miners were read. A bell rang for each one of them.
Kyle Acorn. Jason Adkins.
Wow, yeah, that's a really touching moment. Did you get a chance to talk to some of the family members of those miners?
There were some family members at the courthouse, but they declined to be interviewed, and I respected that. But I also went to the mine site, which is some distance from Beckley, but still in Raleigh County, and I think you've been there too.
Oh, yeah, I was there about a month ago. I remember there's a memorial there with miner helmets, and they're on top of these crosses, and there's photos of each of the miners who died, and it's so quiet and really somber there. Was anyone over there?
I met Pam Napper, who lost her son, her brother, and her nephew in the explosion. Pam lives in Ohio now, but she comes down every year. And she came on Saturday with her granddaughter, who was 19 months old when her father was killed at Upper Big Branch. She is 16 now. They happened to arrive at the mine site at the same time as Gary and Patty Quarles, who lost their son in the explosion. These families, at least, wanted the memorial to be at the mine site. The official memorial is a few miles up the road in Whitesville in Boone County. They told me they were never really given a say about it. Alpha Natural Resources, the successor company to Massey, paid for the memorial in Whitesville.
They should put the memorial here. Exactly where they should have. They should have put it right here. Absolutely, I agree. I don't care if it's just a stone with it on there.
Any other moments or takeaways that stood out to you, Curtis, talking to these family members?
Gosh, there were so many. But here's one where Pam talks about how her son got the job. Most of her family worked in coal mining, and it turns out that her brother, Timmy, was the one who hired her son, Josh. But Timmy called her first to warn her it was a dangerous job.
He said, before I hire him, you got to make me a promise. Something happens to him, you can't ever be mad at me. I said, well, it's good enough for Dad, it's good enough for you, it's good enough for my brothers, my niece, nephews. That's just how I left it.
And again, both Pam's brother and son died that day 15 years ago.
Wow, man, that's incredibly eerie to hear that, but it's also so important. And of course, to remember these guys too 15 years later. Curtis, thanks so much for sharing your experience.
Happy to do it. Thank you.
Curtis Tate is a reporter for West Virginia Public Broadcasting. Justin Hicks reports for Louisville Public Media. Coming up, poison ivy can be more than just a summertime hazard.
Well, you can get poison ivy rash in the winter, even in the dead of winter, from contacting the plant.
Tips on being safe and making the itch go away. You're inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams.
Support for Inside Appalachia is provided by Concord University, offering 31 bachelor-level degrees and 6 master-level degrees for students of any age. More information at concord.edu.
For all the products on pharmacy shelves, people still use folk remedies for common ailments, like the itchy rash that comes from poison ivy. Folkways reporter Wendy Welch spoke with 2 health professionals about where folk cures and mainstream medicine overlap.
Hello, I'm Mary Beth Babis. I am a pharmacist and wannabe ethnobotanist. I started learning about plants when I was in 3rd grade from a library book, and I've been loving it ever since.
Hi, I'm Mary Beth Mitchum. I work for George Mason University as an assistant professor and the director of the Master of Public Health program online version, and I like to eat plants.
Babos says, when it comes to poison ivy, different people will have different experiences.
So I'm blessed that I only get a mild itchy rash. I've had poison ivy more times than I could count, but for me it's just no worse than a mosquito bite.
Most people, about 8 in 10 who come into contact with poison ivy, develop an itchy series of blisters, but about 15% will have a reaction so severe it resembles chemical burns. Babos describes what's responsible.
There's an oil in the plant that contains a chemical known as urushiol, U-R-U-S-H-I-O-L, that contains free sulfhydryl groups that form covalent bonds.
In other words, that nasty oil on your skin is going to make you itch, so you need to get it off quickly. The fastest way is to wash with soap and water. But let's say you're in the woods. Then you can also try a few local plants to counteract the urushiol. For instance, jewelweed. It often grows near poison ivy.
Jewelweed is noticeable because it has bright green leaves and it has flowers that are bright orangey yellow.
And it is easy to use immediately.
You can squish up the plant. It has kind of a really juicy stalk, and put that juice on the spot that touched the poison ivy, and it may neutralize the urushiol so that you don't get the rash.
Another remedy that's been used for centuries is broadleaf plantain. It grows all over Appalachia, and many gardeners think of it as a weed. You literally pluck a leaf, smash it up, and rub it on. Plantain doesn't die back in winter, which is good, because neither does poison ivy.
Well, you can get poison ivy rash in the winter, even in the dead of winter, from contacting the plant.
There's another plant-based option that works in cold weather. Truly desperate hikers can scrub the affected area with oak leaves or the inside of peeled oak bark or witch hazel bark. Although it works better to make a potion from these ahead of time and carry it with you.
So you would soak the acorns in water and get the liquid off. It'll turn kind of a brownish, and it's that liquid that contains the tannins.
Apply this as soon as you know you've touched poison ivy, or use it as a treatment after the rash appears.
If you already have the rash, the sap from the plant will help with the itch because it's mildly antihistaminic. It works like an antihistamine.
Don't worry about breaking the blisters.
The blisters, if you blister from poison ivy, don't contain urushiol. They will not make the rash spread.
But if the oil is still on your skin, you could spread it by scratching. For most people, Mitchum says a salve would be the best treatment. She walks me through the steps. First, gather fresh jewelweed.
I want it to be very green, very vibrant, and I will gather the leaves, the stems, and the flowers, so all top parts of the plant. Next, I'm going to chop the jewelweed. Once I have chopped the jewelweed and I have enough for about 2/3 of a pint jar, I will stuff it in the pint jar. Typically, I use olive oil, and I will pour that onto the jewelweed that's in the jar, making sure that the oil completely covers the jewelweed and that it is at the top of the jar. Next, I will put a lid on the jar just to make sure that nothing gets in or out while it's simmering.
Put the sealed jar on a dish towel in a crock pot, set on its lowest setting, sitting in an inch or two of water. Simmer for 18 to 24 hours, adding more water as needed.
And once it's cool, I will then pour off the oil and strain out the jewelweed, making sure to extract as much of it as I possibly can. Now's the fun part. For every rough cup of oil, I'm going to add about a teaspoon of beeswax. This will help.
Simmer and stir in a double boiler until the mix is fully blended. Then pour it into a container, put the lid on, and
there you have it, Jewelweed Salve 101.
Native Americans used jewelweed to treat poison ivy, and that knowledge was passed on to early settlers. More recently, academic studies have been conducted supporting many plant-based folk cures. But not everything that's circulated as a potential remedy is a good idea, like bleach.
I would not personally put bleach on my skin. Not only would it burn, it's very caustic and it would cause more damage. It's generally not a good idea to put bleach on your skin anyway.
I think I agree. I don't think I would use bleach on my skin. What do you think about rubbing alcohol topically?
Rubbing alcohol topically might help to remove some of the oil, but I don't know how good it would feel.
Especially if you broke those blisters open, it might burn quite a bit.
MBV, what about butter?
I worry about anything occlusive on irritated skin, so butter might be an issue. I just can't imagine that it would feel good.
And I've heard people using tea bags as a topical applicant.
I don't think that there would be any harm from a tepid tea bag.
Just make sure it's not hot. In fact, cold can be much better, as in frozen.
I do like the concept of jewelweed ice cubes.
That is literally fresh jewelweed, frozen into ice cubes and applied directly to the skin.
That feels so good when you have that itchy rash.
I asked them about the common practice of putting hot water on the rash to kill the itch.
Generally not a good idea to put hot water on a blister.
The Mary Beths offer some final pieces of wisdom when it comes to poison ivy. First,
remember not to burn poison ivy because the oils can be carried in the smoke and damage your lungs.
Next,
you don't want to pee in poison ivy.
No.
Been there, done that. You get the rash in some awkward places.
And that's when you will want steroids, not jewelweed.
In fact, Mitchum says her husband is one of those severe reactors who needs steroids when he gets poison ivy. The gentler cures of the folk world take longer on those chemical burns. She also says it's a good idea when it comes to taking herbal cures to talk to your healthcare professional before you do anything rash.
Did you know?
For Inside Appalachia, in Hayside, Virginia,
ivy,
I'm Wendy Welch.
That you can prevent the crying if you use water and soap. But what if you are out in the wilderness and the one thing that you forget is your water and soul. You trip down a hill, and though it's a thrill, you get to the bottom and notice. Face down in some leaves, you get up and see you landed in some poison ivy. Who do you call?
You might know the sharp teeth of the deer fly, or the pain of fire ant bites, so strong for their size. Or perhaps you've gotten a rash in your armpit that sings to you until you scratch it, then it gets more red. You're camping at night and mosquitoes bite, you slap your thighs every 3 seconds.
That story is part of our Folkways reporting project, which covers arts and culture in our region. For more on folk remedies for poison ivy, visit our website, wvpublic.org. Zach Harold, Inside Appalachia's resident foodie. What brings you on the show today?
This will come as no surprise to anybody, but I have been thinking deep thoughts about another iconic West Virginia food, particularly pepperoni rolls. A lot of ink has been spilled about pepperoni rolls. Tell me, Mason, what was your first experience with it?
It's funny you ask, because I remember pretty clearly it was when I used to referee roller derby. And I'd run up and down the eastern seaboard and even to the Midwest to referee bouts all over the place. And I learned pretty quick that you can spend a lot of money on traveling, especially on food, but a good hack is to stop at the grocery stores along the way and check out what they got in their deli. And I quickly discovered that a lot of places in Western Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland would carry pepperoni rolls in the grocery store, and they were inexpensive and they kept well, which made it perfect for a traveling roller derby ref.
See, that is the original appeal of a pepperoni roll, right? It was invented in north central West Virginia by coal miners' families to have a handy lunch and an affordable lunch to take down into the mines with them. So what I'm interested in, though, is by this point, obviously, you're running all over and finding pepperoni rolls. They've become ubiquitous, not just in West Virginia, but in surrounding states too. But I'm trying to figure out how they got from their origins in north central West Virginia to becoming this regional favorite. And I think I might have found a window into that aspect of the pepperoni roll story.
Really? So this ubiquitous food that's beloved across Appalachia, you found the missing link.
Well, it comes back to the school lunchrooms in Kanawha County, West Virginia, where some people say they got their pepperoni roll education.
Tell me more.
Let's roll the tape.
This is warm water and yeast.
It's 7:30 in the morning here in the kitchen at Horace Mann Middle School in Charleston, West Virginia. Breakfast just wrapped up, but lunch is already heavy on everyone's minds. There's a lot of cooking to do between then and now. Food Services Coordinator Lori Lanier is showing me how to make Kanawha County Schools' famous pepperoni rolls. It starts, as all pepperoni rolls do, with the dough, but not just any dough. That's one secret of the Kanawha Schools pepperoni roll. They're made using the same recipe as those beloved soft and sweet hot rolls that accompany every school Thanksgiving dinner and Salisbury steak.
I don't care how many times you make them. Sometimes you may have a pinch more flour or a pinch less flour. You just have to watch the consistency because it's all one, how the flour was sifted.
It will take several batches of dough to make enough rolls for the whole school, and each batch has to raise about a half an hour before the process can continue.
Don't y'all pour it out in separate things so it can raise?
Yes, is that what you want me to do?
Yes, please.
Yes.
After the dough is raised, you still got to fill giant sheet pans with rolls that are individually stuffed and shaped, bake them for about 15 minutes, and brush them with melted butter. Cooks will tell you this is one of the most time-consuming lunches to prepare. A lot of schools shift pepperoni roll day to the end of the week so they can work on the rolls a few days in advance. Horace Mann made half of their rolls the day before I visited, storing them in the walk-in cooler until it was time to pop them in the oven. But there's a good reason they go to all this trouble. These pepperoni rolls are beloved in a way no other school lunch is. My friend and former coworker Whitney Humphrey is 34 and graduated from Riverside High School in 2007.
On pepperoni roll days, like the teachers would let you out like 5 or 10 minutes early so that you could get to the cafeteria because there was always such a long line. Because even kids who typically didn't eat school lunch would eat lunch on pepperoni roll day.
It was the same thing at Capitol High School, where Brittany Carwick graduated in 2006.
We would always try to talk our teachers into letting us in class at the door so we could run all the way across the courtyard and be first in line for the pepperoni rolls because they're so good.
And Brittany couldn't even really eat pepperoni rolls.
I actually am allergic to pepperoni, but I still love the pepperoni rolls. And so I would unroll them, take the line of pepperoni out, hand it to all my friends, roll it back up and eat it. Because it had the cheese in it still, and it was just delicious cheesy bread at that point.
Tom Bragg also worked with me at the late, great Charleston Daily Mail. He's a Nitro High School grad, and he loved pepperoni rolls so much that it kind of turned him into a scam artist.
20 years ago when I was in school, you were assigned a lunch number. It wasn't like a scan card or a barcode. They told you, here's your 3-digit or 4-digit number, whatever it is, don't forget it. But what we realized is that they were assigned alphabetically in numerical order. And I started thinking one day, on pepperoni roll day, I was like, my best friend we weren't related, but happened to have the same last name. But my best friend always brought his lunch or would skip school and go get lunch somewhere else. And I was like, man, he's not taking advantage of pepperoni roll day here. And his number is one before mine. So I'm just going to go back through line and get a second pepperoni roll day. And my scheme worked great. Until it wasn't some random kid, it was my best friend. We were at his house and the lunch bill came. And his mom's like, dude, I thought you didn't eat lunch at school. She goes, yeah, I don't eat lunch at school. And I started giggling. We were close enough that it was a funny thing. She was like, oh, Tommy, you owe me $10 for the pepperoni rolls you ate last month. And we paid her. It was all good.
Now, this probably comes as no surprise, right? Pepperoni rolls at this point are an iconic West Virginia food. Invented in the north-central part of the state by Italian immigrants who wanted a portable lunch to take into the coal mines. We all know the story. But I would challenge any West Virginian who doesn't live within an hour's drive of Clarksburg. Cast your mind back about 20 or 30 years. Just how prevalent were pepperoni rolls in your day-to-day life back then? I mean, I went to school in Boone County, one county away from Kanawha County, and we never had pepperoni rolls on the school menu. And I've polled folks around my age who grew up in other neighboring counties, Putnam, Lincoln, Jackson, Logan, Clay, Nicholas. None of them had pepperoni rolls on their school lunch trays either. And even my Kanawha County friends who enjoyed pepperoni rolls at school didn't have many memories of them outside the lunchroom.
Kanawha County schools is where we learned about pepperoni rolls, essentially. You started seeing them pop up in gas stations after that.
So here's what I decided to figure out. How did pepperoni rolls catch on in Kanawha County schools hours away from where the dish was born and years before it became a statewide phenomenon?
I mean, it became kind of a quest with you.
That's Diane Miller, Kanawha County Schools Director of Child Nutrition. Once she heard about my little research project, she started fishing around herself. There's apparently no paper record of pepperoni rolls' first appearance, no archive of school menus that we could dig into. So she had to go off people's memories. She talked with the Kanawha superintendent and folks from the State Department of Education. She even found some retired school cooks and picked their brains.
They believe that it started between 1992 and 94. But we, in Kanawha County, can get it back to 97, 98.
In doing so, she discovered a possible origin story.
They ran out of the sub buns. They were making their own pizza breads. And they ran out, and they didn't know what else to do. So they decided that, that they had roll dough for the next day. And so they just put them together as they had pepperoni rolls with their families that were working in the mines.
I asked Diane to connect me with a school cook who might know some of the history, and that's how I ended up on the phone with Nancy Romeo.
I have made more pepperoni rolls than you can shake a stick at.
Nancy retired in 2010 after 20 years with the county, but she says pepperoni rolls were already on the menu when she arrived in 1990. She even called a former coworker to make sure.
We were hired about the same time. Both of us agreed that they were making them before we both were hired.
And that was as much information as she could give me. I had one more lead, though. I called in a favor at the Charleston Gazette-Mail. They don't seem to do it anymore, but there was a time when the paper printed the Kanawha School's menu for each week. Using that, I thought maybe we could pinpoint the first reference of pepperoni rolls. Well, my connection checked the newspaper archive, and it turns out school menus didn't run in the paper back in the 80s and early 90s. But I did get the name of another retired school cook, Miss Ellen Carter. I found her in the kitchen of the Rand Community Center in eastern Kanawha County. She told me she didn't really have time for an interview, but agreed to let me hold a microphone near her while she made hot rolls. How many rolls are you going to make today?
This is going to be making 120. And I feed about 112 to 115 people.
So they'll all be gone.
Yeah. And I make the rolls, and the pepperoni rolls are made out of the same dough.
It turns out Miss Ellen has worked in this same kitchen for most of the last 50 years. She went to work for Rand Elementary in 1970 and stayed until 1999. The school shut down a few years later and became a community center. Miss Ellen then came back to cook for the center's senior nutrition program.
I'm 89, in October I'll be 90.
So if anyone would remember when the pepperoni rolls made their school lunch debut, I figured it'd be Miss Ellen.
I think it was early 80s that they started making pepperoni rolls.
She couldn't give me a more exact time frame, and she had no idea how the rolls came to be on school menus in the first place. But she does know the recipe probably got disseminated in a regular meeting that school cooks used to have.
Yeah, we used to have monthly meetings, and we'd go to a different school, you know. We'd take a covered dish, we'd take a menu to the dish we made, then make us a copy of it. I got gobs of them, you know, so.
One thing she does know, the way she was taught to make pepperoni rolls is not the way cooks make them now. Instead of shaping them individually, she'd get a big lump of dough rolled out flat.
And then you go back and roll it with a rolling pin.
She'd top it with cheese and pepperoni, then roll the whole thing into a log.
And then you cut it and roll your pepperoni rolls. And I don't know if anybody rolls them out like we do, so.
And Miss Ellen still makes a lot of pepperoni rolls. She recently got a call to make 1,000 for a local high school, which was selling them as a fundraiser. She doesn't usually make them for her senior citizens, though. Turns out they're not huge fans.
They like a hot meal. Like today, Reggie, I think, honey, you'd probably take a meatloaf out and put it on. Today they liked it, and then we're going to do a baked potato today and a salad, you know, so.
Miss Ellen's senior citizens might not care much for pepperoni rolls, but I know some folks who do.
You guys like pepperoni rolls? Yeah.
They were going fast the day I visited Horace Mann Middle, but I managed to snag a few and tuck them away in my audio bag. So once I got my friends to open up about their fond pepperoni roll memories,
Zach Harold.
I could surprise them with a taste of the past.
Yes, this is exactly what I remember. Yep, exactly. Oh, look at all that pepperoni. Oh my gosh, that's so good. And then like the cheese is all gooey and melty, and like, you know, you can see that, you know, the cheese has a little bit of that pepperoni grease on it. Oh, it's divine.
Oh my gosh, that's a trip down memory lane, Zach. That is so good. Meat to cheese ratio is great. The cheese is melted, but not like lava and molten hot inside. Cooked long enough that the grease from the pepperonis is kind of soaked into the rest of the bread, but hasn't like burned it or overtaken it. This is great.
Well, I got something for you.
Okay. Ah! Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Thank you.
Don't make yourself sick.
Oh, I remember this. I'm pulling apart the outer layer of bread. And then you hit the spiral, and you can sort of pull that apart with your fingers. You see the pepperoni line, you can take it out if you
You are
want to.
practiced at this.
I mean, I did it for 18 years.
It's coming back to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is solid cheese.
It's solid cheese.
Memory is such a funny thing. The Kanawha County Schools pepperoni roll is beloved by generations of school kids at this point. And between me and the folks at the Kanawha board office, we probably talked to dozens of people trying to track down its origins. And the best we could come up with was a hazy timeline that puts us somewhere in the early to late 80s and a plausible but not exactly conclusive story about a school that ran out of pizza subs one day. This entire story unfolded within recent living memory, and those fragments are the best we can do. And yet Whitney and Tom and Brittany have these vivid memories that all came flooding back the instant they bit into one of those pepperoni rolls.
And I mean, here I am 34 years old and I'm sitting here talking to you for a radio piece about pepperoni rolls because it's had such like a presence, I guess, in my life and in my, I don't have very fond memories of school, but I do have fond memories of the school pepperoni rolls. And, that seems kind of silly, but it's true.
I'm thinking those memories might be the more important ones. For Inside Appalachia, I'm Zach Harold in Charleston, West Virginia.
President Trump's EPA administrator promised what he called the largest deregulation in U.S. history, including the weakening of environmental protections, like the smog rule. Some folks are asking, can he do that legally? The Allegheny Front's Reed Frazier has more.
EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin promised to roll back 31 rules, covering everything from how much carbon dioxide cars and power plants can emit to how much mercury and soot we breathe. Zeldin claimed the moves would lower the cost of living and pump up domestic industry. I talked about what these actions will mean with Patrice Sims, Vice President for Healthy Communities at the nonprofit environmental law firm Earth Justice. He said these moves don't look all that different from similar ones made at the EPA during the first Trump administration.
It illustrates the same interest in catering to the desires of industry and of polluters to not have to spend money to control pollution.
One of the regulations Zeldin's talked about rolling back is the regulation around particulate matter, or soot, which has been shown time and again to be bad for our health. It's my understanding that EPA is required under laws like the Clean Air Act to use science when setting these kinds of standards. Is the Trump EPA going to have to produce some kind of science that shows that soot is not, in fact, bad for our health?
Your observation about particulate matter, I think, or soot pollution is really important. It is one of the rules that Administrator Zeldin identified in his announcement. But the statute identifies an obligation for the agency to set limits on the outdoor concentration of pollutants like particulate matter or soot. And the statute specifically directs the agency to identify that level, that allowable level of particulate matter, based exclusively on analysis of health impacts. What might Zeldin bring forward to try to change that? I could not tell you, but certainly that's exactly the question that we'll be paying very close attention to. What is that data?
The EPA under Zeldin has reportedly talked about dissolving its Office of Research and Development and purging up to 75% of the people who work there. That would be more than 1,000 scientists. What did these scientists do, and what impact would doing away with this office have?
One of the things that's just fundamentally true about the kinds of decisions that EPA makes is that they are, the intent is that they are universally grounded in good science. And that's one of the things that the Office of Research and Development does, or ORD does, is really, it's the center for scientific understanding within EPA, and helps to ensure the scientific integrity of the decisions that the agency is making across its regulatory obligations. Dismantling that is incredibly problematic because it is the place where that independent, science-focused examination happens. And if you're not doing that, I think the question then becomes, well, where are you getting your scientific evaluations and assessments. Who are you believing? I fear that what the intent of the administration is then to rely on industry scientific assessments who obviously do not have the public's best interest at heart, at least not all the time.
That was Patrice Sims, Vice President for Healthy Communities at Earth Justice, speaking with Reed Frazier of the Allegheny Front. Conservationists at Bernheim Forest and Arboretum in Kentucky were the first researchers to track a mated pair of eastern golden eagles. The eagles were named Harper and Athena. Now, Athena may be giving researchers new information about the giant birds. Derek Parham at WKU Public Radio brings us the story.
Every year, thousands of visitors flock to Bernheim Forest and Arboretum for a glimpse at the famed forest giants and a giant forest art installation. But if they look up, parkgoers may be lucky to see another giant that calls the park home, soaring above the treetops of the 16,000-acre research forest.
This is prime-time golden eagle habitat right here.
Evan Patrick is a natural areas manager at Bernheim and says that with an 8-foot wingspan and talons that rival a grizzly bear, golden eagles rule the sky above Bernheim in the winter months. Athena, a now famous female eagle, was fitted with a GPS tracker in 2019 alongside her mate, Harper.
And they use this transponder system that is basically a backpack that fits on their back, and it's attached to them using a Kevlar fabric that lasts for years and years and years.
Andrew Berry, the park's director of conservation, says they use that tracker to keep up with the eagles' annual migration to and from northern Canada.
We were able to coordinate with the Parks Canada researchers up there at Wapusk National Park, and they do, reconnaissance into the park in the summer with helicopters. It's really an inaccessible and wild place.
After Athena's mate Harper passed away, the park captured another eagle, a young male named Hermes, in 2024. Researchers tracking Athena also noticed a new unnamed mate by her side, but attempts to capture and study him were unsuccessful.
Athena was not going to let that happen. She knew exactly what we were doing. She knew the plan. For those days that we were sitting in the blind, there were many, many hours that we could see Athena and her mate sitting about 300 yards away from the blind, staring at our blind, knowing that we were in there.
Athena and her new mate did not return alone. According to the partner park in Canada where Athena has her summer nest, known as an eyrie, an exciting new development was on the way.
And not only have they seen Athena's eyrie, they have seen Athena on the eyrie with a young bird. So that was confirmed for us a couple of years ago that she in fact did have a chick, and she had fledged that chick.
Since then, Athena has been spotted working together with a juvenile at Bernheim. Whether that's the same chick still remains to be seen. But Barry says it's a very real possibility that they hope to confirm.
We're uncertain whether that means that she knows this bird and she's kind of sharing a moment with it, or if maybe that she's an adult eagle and she's more tolerant of an immature eagle. Something she wouldn't necessarily do with another adult, which would be more of a competitor.
In a secluded area of Bernheim behind locked gates, Patrick searches the skies for signs of the juvenile in hopes of one day capturing and tracking Athena's potential offspring.
Grab my binoculars out of my backpack. I'm more curious about capturing a juvenile to see what that migration looks like, how the juveniles migrate with or without the adults. We have several years of data of a breeding pair migrating. We don't have any information about juvenile.
Luckily, Patrick says the birds give them plenty of time to conduct their research, with the oldest recorded golden eagle reaching at least 30 years old.
It's possible that Athena could have another 10 good years, 15 good years from now, and Hermes might have another 20, so they are long-lived birds.
With that in mind, researchers know that this won't be their last shot at uncovering the secrets of Bernheim's giants of the sky and how those large birds raise their young.
There's some mystery to be unraveled through research and tracking birds that we still quite don't have the answers to yet.
I'm Derek Parham in Bowling Green.
Until next time, thanks for joining us as we journey throughout Appalachia. Our theme music is by Matt Jackford. Other music this week was provided by Loose Cattle, Hello June, Frank George, Pete Moss, Joe Dobbs in the 1937 Flood, and Blue Dot Sessions. Bill Lynch is our producer. Abby Neff is our associate producer. Our executive producer is Eric Douglas. Kelly Libby is our editor. Our audio mixer is Patrick Stevens. We had help this week from Folkways editor Chris Julin. You can find us on Instagram @InAppalachia. You can also send us an email to insideappalachia@wvpublic.org. Visit wvpublic.org/InsideAppalachia to subscribe or stream all of our stories. Or look for Inside Appalachia on your favorite podcast app. Inside Appalachia is a production of West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
Support for Inside Appalachia is provided by Concord University, educating the people of our region and beyond for more than 150 years. More information at concord.edu.